Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive.
The podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside. Let's dive in. What if everything about self-help isn't just wrong, but is designed to be wrong?
Okay, that's a heavy question to start with, but it's really the core of what we're digging into today.
Right, because we're talking about this huge, massive industry self-help. It's everywhere.
Absolutely everywhere. And, on the surface, it promises improvement, growth, success.
Things we all kind of want, right?
Exactly. But our mission today is to take a really popular framework within that world, specifically looking at the kind of axioms promoted by gurus like Robin Sharma, using his stuff as a sort of case study.
And not just critique it like, does this morning routine work? No. We want to subject it to a really ruthless, logical, and philosophical critique.
We're asking why it's built this way. What's the underlying structure? What function does this constant push for, individual optimization actually serve in the bigger picture?
Yeah, the goal isn't just to say this advice is bad. It's to show how it's engineered, how the flaws, the logical gaps, the philosophical vulnerabilities, how they might actually be deliberate.
Right. Designed maybe to keep you hooked, keep you dependent on the guru, perhaps. And crucially, designed to steer your attention away from the bigger systemic issues that might be causing the pain in the first place.
That's the core idea we're exploring. We want you, the listener, to start seeing this not just as like helpful tips, but as an ideology, an engineered system.
So to do that, we first need to understand the rules of the game it forces you to play.
Okay, let's get into it. Segment 1. The core narrative. The axioms, the commands, the emotional levers, basically the rules of engagement.
Our sources identify these 5 core concepts or axioms. Think of them as the foundational beliefs you have to accept for the rest of the advice to even make sense.
Right. They're not just suggestions. They're the philosophical pillar.
Exactly. Without them, the whole thing kind of crumbles.
So first one up, and this one's pretty chilling when you break it down. Axiom 1, transactional human relationships.
Yeah. This basically says you need to look at everyone you know through a lens of, well, capitalist utility.
Like, are they useful to me? Do they benefit my goals?
Precisely. You hear it all the time. In this world, people are either joy elevators or they're energy vampires or dream stealers.
This is such a binary view, isn't it? You're either an asset or a liability.
It completely strips away the complexity of human connection. Think about it. If someone's having a tough time, if they need support, if they're struggling.
In this model, they become a liability, an energy vampire.
Right. And the implied action, the command that follows, is ruthless. It's social pruning. Cut them off. Optimize your network for maximum personal ROI.
Okay, but hang on. Isn't there something to be said for protecting your energy? Setting boundaries. Isn't that healthy?
That's the really subtle, tricky part. Because yes, boundaries are healthy, but boundary setting is usually about mutual respect, about protecting yourself within a relationship. This transactional thing, though, it's different. It's unilateral. It's based purely on whether someone is currently contributing to your success metrics. It's not about the relationship. It's about your personal bottom line.
So labeling someone an energy vampire because they're, say, depressed or going through a divorce.
You're essentially dehumanizing them. You're justifying abandoning them based on a cost-benefit analysis of your own emotional energy.
It fosters profound loneliness, ironically, both for the person being cut and the person doing the cutting.
Wow. Okay. That sets a pretty bleak stage. And it leads right into the next one, doesn't it? Axiom 2, the primacy of world-class performance.
Oh, yeah. This is the obsession with being world-class. It's presented as the ultimate goal, the telos, the whole point of being alive.
But what does world-class even mean? The sources point out it's deliberately vague, right? And hyper-competitive.
Exactly. It's intentionally a moving target. Today, world-class might mean waking up at 4 a.m., having the perfect green smoothie, hitting a certain income level.
But tomorrow, it could be something completely different. Right. So you're always striving, always falling short, always needing the next piece of advice, the next course, the next book to tell you how to finally get there. You're never allowed to just be or to feel like you've reached a sustainable level of, contentment.
It creates this constant anxiety, this feeling of inadequacy.
Which the system absolutely thrives on. It needs you perpetually chasing this undefined peak that only the guru can define and crucially redefine whenever they need to sell you something new.
Okay, so you're striving for this impossible goal. Inevitably, you'll face setbacks, you'll feel pain.
And that's where Axiom 3 comes in. Adversity as inherently beneficial.
The everything happens for a reason. School of thought, turbocharged.
Pretty much. It's this preemptive framing where any negative experience, failure, burnout, injustice, loss is automatically spun as a growth opportunity, a lesson in disguise.
The classic line they cite is, "A bad day for the ego is a great day for the soul."
Right. And on the surface, that sounds profound, maybe? Resilient?
Yeah, it sounds positive. Find the silver lining.
But the function, according to the analysis, is actually a form of distress management. It's like a spiritual painkiller. By immediately slapping a positive, soulful meaning onto suffering, it stops you from looking at the real cause.
Especially if the cause is, say, external or systemic.
Precisely. It's what's often called spiritual bypassing. If you lose your job because your company prioritized profits over people, this framework tells you, this is a chance for soul growth. What can you learn?
Instead of, say, "This is unjust, maybe we should organize."
Exactly. It redirects the energy inward onto self-improvement rather than outward onto challenging the source of the problem. Very convenient for maintaining the status quo.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, moving to the more practical side. Axiom 4. Ritualize behavior as causative.
This is where the specific branded habits come in, the magic formulas.
Like the famous 20-20-20 routine, 20 minutes exercise, 20 reflection, 20 learning.
Exactly like that. And the axiom insists that performing this specific ritual is the direct, guaranteed cause of high performance and success.
It's not just correlated, it causes it.
That's the claim. And this is where the framework just blatantly ignores context privilege reality.
Like confounding variables.
Huge ones. Does the person doing the 20-20-20 have childcare? Do they have a safe place to exercise at 5 a.m.? Do they have a job that even allows for a predictable morning routine? Do they have the financial stability to afford an hour of self-focus before work even starts?
Right. If I'm working 2 jobs, maybe catching a few hours sleep between shifts, that ritual isn't just hard, it's impossible.
Completely impossible for vast numbers of people. But the axiom holds firm. The ritual causes success. So, if you don't achieve success...
It must be my fault I failed the ritual.
Bingo! It's a perfect closed loop. The blame always lands back on the individual, never on the system that creates the constraints, and never on the guru whose one-size-fits-all method failed. It conveniently ignores the possibility that successful people might do these things because they already have the resources and stability, not the other way around.
It really turns discipline into this kind of arbitrary performance of virtue tied to a specific brand.
Precisely. And that brings us to the last one, which feels particularly cynical. Axiom 5. Love as a covert business strategy.
Ooh. Okay, unpack that one.
This is where things like generosity, empathy, kindness, they get reframed. They're not presented as intrinsically good human qualities.
No. What are they?
They're presented as superior tactics, tools to be deployed strategically for, wait for it, profit maximization.
Seriously?
Yeah. The justification cited is often something like, the most loving person in the room wins. But wins doesn't mean achieves enlightenment. It means wins the deal, wins the negotiation, wins the market share.
So love is just a higher form of sales technique.
Essentially, yes. It's using emotional intelligence not for connection, but for strategic advantage. Perform generosity because your internal calculation suggests it will yield a better return down the line than being purely cutthroat.
Wow. That means you're constantly evaluating your own kindness based on its potential payoff.
Think about the psychological load of that. It commodifies your very essence. It replaces genuine connection with a really sophisticated, maybe even unconscious form of manipulation.
It makes real unconditional care seem naive or inefficient.
Exactly, or simply a poor strategy. Okay, so those are the 5 axioms, the ground rules you're meant to accept.
And accepting them leads directly to certain actions, right? The commands.
Yes. The axioms aren't just philosophical. They have immediate behavioral consequences. 3 key commands really drive the dependency. First, flowing directly from axiom 1 about transactional relationships.
Is key command 1, social pruning?
Yep. The explicit instruction, delete the people who steal your joy. Optimize that social portfolio. Your network is your net worth, remember.
Cut the liability.
Then, tied to axiom 4 about rituals.
You get key command 2, methodological dependency.
Right. You must follow the specific branded routine, the 20-20-20, the miracle morning, whatever the guru's selling this month. It can't just be any morning routine. It has to be theirs.
Why is that distinction so important?
Because it ensures the guru maintains intellectual property over your success and your failure. If you succeed, it's thanks to their method. If you fail, you didn't follow it correctly, it locks you into their ecosystem.
Okay, so you're cutting people off, you're slavishly following a specific routine, How do they get you to actually do this stuff?
That's where the primary emotional levers come in. This whole system is incredibly effective at tapping into deep-seated fears.
Like what?
Our sources identify 4 big ones. First, the fear of being drained. That's where the energy vampire language is so powerful, it makes connections seem inherently risky.
Second, the fear of being average. That ties right back to the world-class pressure.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be mediocre, right?
Especially not in our hyper-competitive culture. Third, there's the fear of complexity.
How does that play in?
Well, the world is complex. Problems are messy, solutions are nuanced. These frameworks offer incredibly simple binary answers. Just do X and you'll get Y. It's comforting, even if it's totally reductive.
Like, just wake up earlier and all your problems disappear.
Exactly. And the fourth, maybe the most powerful lever, is the universal fear of being a victim.
Nobody wants to feel powerless.
Precisely. And this is the psychological masterstroke. The narrative says, are you feeling like a victim of circumstance? Powerless? Unsuccessful?
Yeah.
Well, stop being a victim. Take control. Buy my book. Follow my system. Do the 20-20-20. It offers an immediate, tangible action you can take to feel a sense of agency.
Even if that agency is channeled into obedience to the guru's framework.
Especially then, because now the framework itself becomes the antidote to victimhood in your mind. You become dependent on it to maintain that feeling of control, reinforcing the whole cycle.
Wow. Okay, so that's the narrative structure. Now we need to take out the logical scalpel.
Right. Segment 2, identifying the fallacies. How does this illusion actually work? Where does the logic break down? This is where we see the cracks.
And the sources argue these cracks aren't accidental. Let's start with the big one, the absolute cornerstone fallacy of so much of this stuff.
The post hoc ergo propter hoc trap.
Which is Latin for?
After this, therefore because of this, the false cause fallacy.
Okay, explain how that works here.
It's the engine behind Axiom 4, the ritualized behavior thing. It takes a correlation and pretends it's causation.
Give us the classic example.
Successful person X wakes up at 4 a.m. The self-help gospel jumps from that observation to the conclusion, waking up at 4 a.m. makes people successful.
But that's a huge leap.
Massive! It completely ignores all the other factors. Maybe successful person X has cooks and cleaners and drivers and inherited wealth that allows them the luxury of waking up at 4 a.m. to meditate. Maybe they're successful for reasons totally unrelated to their wake-up time.
It's confusing correlation with cause. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other.
Exactly. It's like saying, billionaires often wear expensive watches, therefore wearing an expensive watch will make you a billionaire. It's absurd when you put it like that.
But with habits like early rising or cold showers, it feels more plausible, more controllable.
And that's the key. The industry focuses on the habits you can control, the things they can sell you books and courses about. They conveniently ignore the factors you can't easily control, like systemic inequality or sheer luck, because those don't sell self-help products.
So the post hoc fallacy lets them build this whole edifice on shaky ground.
And it's reinforced by another major fallacy, the false dichotomy.
Reducing everything to black and white.
Yep. Taking complex reality and forcing it into simplistic binary choices. This eliminates all nuance and basically herds you down their preferred path.
The source gave a great example of this.
So play with toxic people or are live at world-class choice.
Right, as if those are the only two options in existence.
It completely ignores the possibility of, having complex relationships, setting boundaries, working through difficulties, or even just having friends who aren't hyper-optimized success machines.
It makes anything less than world-class interactions seem inherently dangerous or toxic.
Which, again, is incredibly isolating. It forces you towards the guru's narrow definition of success and away from the messy, complicated reality of human life. It's comforting because it's simple, but it's a dangerously distorted view.
This need for simple, often spiritual-sounding answers leads us to the next tactic.
Spiritual bypassing. This one is subtle but really powerful.
Okay, define that for us. What is spiritual bypassing?
It's using spiritual ideas or language think, soul, ego, vibration, alignment, the universe, to avoid dealing with uncomfortable realities, especially systemic or political ones.
So turning a political problem into a personal spiritual one.
Exactly. Let's say you're feeling deep anxiety about, economic instability or precarious work. The bypassing approach doesn't look at labor rights or economic policy.
No, it tells you.
It tells you the problem is your mindset or your vibration isn't aligned with abundance, or you need to heal your relationship with money. The solution becomes internal spiritual work like journaling or meditation or affirmations.
Rather than, say, advocating for a living wage or better job security.
Precisely. It shifts the focus and the blame entirely onto the individual's inner state, effectively neutralizing any impulse to challenge the external system that might be causing the distress. It keeps you busy polishing your soul while the structural problems remain untouched.
It's a way of managing discontent without actually changing anything fundamental.
You got it. And that connects to the final piece here, the philosophical operation our source calls the commodification of essence.
Turning human qualities into tools for gain.
Yeah. We touched on it with Axiom 5 Love as a business strategy. It's taking things that are intrinsically valuable, things core to our humanity, like love, authenticity, connection, empathy.
And turning them into instruments,
Yeah.
tools to achieve some external goal, usually financial or status related.
Exactly. They're stripped of their inherent worth and valued only for their utility in marketplace or the social hierarchy.
But again, playing devil's advocate, isn't being kind and empathetic, isn't that just good for business, good social capital?
There's a difference, a crucial one, between genuine reciprocity and strategic deployment. Think about helping a neighbor move versus networking with calculated generosity because you think that person might be useful later.
Okay, I see the distinction. One is about connection, the other is about investment.
Right. When you perform kindness or empathy purely because you've calculated it will lead to a better personal outcome, you're not just potentially deceiving the other person, you're fundamentally changing your own relationship to that quality.
How so?
You start seeing sincerity itself as a tool. Authenticity becomes a performance. Love becomes leverage. It hollows out the meaning of these qualities from the inside out. The constant calculation, the what's in it for me, applied even to kindness. It's corrosive.
It makes genuine connection almost impossible because you're always, on some level, running the numbers.
Exactly. Okay, so we've seen the rules and we've seen the logical flaws holding them up.
Now let's widen the lens. Segment 3. Philosophical contradictions and systemic alignment. Why does this stuff work so well? What deeper currents is it tapping into?
This is where we connect these self-help ideas to bigger historical trends, global philosophers, and critical theories. We need to understand the why. Why are people drawn to this?
Let's start with that world-class obsession again. The source calls it the problem with world-class.
Yeah.
Conflating being with doing.
Right. This relentless drive for external achievement isn't new. There's a clear historical echo here.
The Protestant work ethic.
Bingo. Max Weber wrote about this, the idea that hard work, discipline, and accumulating wealth were signs of being one of God's elect. Worldly success equaled moral virtue.
So being world-class today is like the secular version of being divinely favored. And if you're struggling, you must be lazy, morally flawed.
That's the underlying implication, isn't it? It neatly justifies inequality. But look at the philosophical contradiction. How does this constant striving stack up against, say, Buddhism?
Well, Buddhism talks about suffering, dukkha, arising from attachment, right? Attachment to outcomes, attachment to self.
Exactly. The path to liberation in Buddhism involves non-attachment, letting go of that constant craving and striving. This self-help model demands the opposite, hyper-attachment to narrowly defined success metrics. They're fundamentally opposed.
But what's the political function? The source brings in Foucault here.
Right. The critical insight involves Foucault's concept of biopower. This isn't just about kings telling you what to do, it's about power working through you, shaping how you manage your own life.
How does world-class fit into that?
It's the perfect tool for self-governance in line with state and capital interests. It makes you want to optimize yourself to be maximally productive, efficient, and competitive. Your personal identity, your sense of self-worth gets completely tied up with your economic output.
So the system doesn't need to force you as much because you're busy policing yourself.
Yeah.
Striving to meet its demands because you've internalized them as your own goals.
Precisely. You become your own overseer, constantly monitoring and correcting yourself to meet this world-class standard, which conveniently aligns with what the economic system needs from you. The guru sells you the tools for this self-surveillance, and the system benefits from your optimized productivity.
Okay, let's apply that same lens to Axiom 3, adversity and political neutralization.
The idea that all suffering is just growth in disguise, again, there's a historical echo.
Stoicism. Amor fati, love your fate.
Exactly. And Stoicism has real wisdom for dealing with things truly beyond our control, illness, natural disasters, mortality, accept what you cannot change.
But the self-help version takes that and applies it differently.
Very differently. The crucial contradiction and resistance comes from perspectives like feminist theory or anti-colonial theory. These frameworks insist on making a hard distinction between personal challenges and systemic oppression.
Like accepting a rainy day is one thing, but accepting sexism or racism is another.
Absolutely. Man-made injustice, systemic inequality, oppression, these are not things to be passively accepted as soul growth. They are things to be actively resisted, challenged, fought against, and dismantled.
So when the self-help guru tells someone facing discrimination to just find the lesson or raise their vibration,
They are performing a profound act of political neutralization. That's the critical insight. It takes legitimate anger and distress about injustice and redirects it inward. It tells you the problem isn't the oppressive system. The problem is your attitude towards the system.
which keeps people passive,
Yeah.
focused on adjusting themselves rather than demanding change.
Exactly. It creates compliant subjects who are too busy working on their inner game to challenge the external power structures. It's incredibly effective at maintaining the status quo.
Which leads us to the impact on society itself. Axiom 1. The atomization of society, transactional relationships.
This one feels very contemporary, very neoliberal. The historical echo is clearly Homo economicus.
The idea that humans are just rational, self-interested economic actors, always calculating personal gain.
Pretty much. And that vision of humanity is just fundamentally at odds with so many other global philosophies. Think about the contradiction with, say, Ubuntu philosophy from Southern Africa.
I am because we are.
Exactly. My humanity isn't defined by my individual achievements, but by my connections, my relationships, my place within the community. We are inherently interdependent.
In that view, someone who is struggling isn't an energy vampire to be cut off.
No, they're part of the we. Their struggle affects the whole. Supporting them is supporting the community and therefore supporting yourself. It's a completely different model from the transactional one.
You could also contrast it with things like anarchist mutual aid structures.
Definitely. Those are built on unconditional support and solidarity precisely because collective strength and resilience are seen as far more powerful and sustainable than individual competition.
So the critical insight here is that pushing transactional relationships serves to
Atomize society. Break down those bonds of solidarity. If everyone sees everyone else as either a tool or a competitor, then collective action becomes impossible.
and collective action, collective solidarity. That's historically been the main check on concentrated power, whether it's the state or corporations.
Precisely. Isolate people, make them see each other as rivals or drains, and they become much easier to control and exploit. Optimized, perhaps, but isolated and weakened.
Okay, this is painting a pretty damning picture of the underlying function. Let's synthesize this in segment 4. Exposed deceptions. What are the core lies, the functional deceptions that keep this engine running?
Right. We need to look at how these ideas function systemically, who benefits, and what the real-world impact is on you, the listener, and on society.
The source material identifies 3 main deceptions. Let's start with deception 1, the cult of the individual peak performer.
This is the myth that your success, your happiness, your liberation is fundamentally a solo journey. You against the world.
The type of deception here is a false dichotomy, right?
Right.
You're either a peak performer or a failure. And it's driven by fear-based control.
Yes. And the source of power behind it. Primarily capital. The economic system loves self-disciplined, highly motivated, individualistic workers who are constantly striving to produce more.
What's its main function?
To atomize society, as we just discussed. But more specifically, it actively discourages collective action. Think about it. If your success is solely your responsibility, then things like unions, community organizing, social movements, they start to look like distractions,
Right.
wastes of precious time you could be spending on optimizing yourself. Or worse, they seem like venues filled with those energy vampires who might drag you down from your world-class trajectory.
Exactly. So the impact is clear.
Yep.
Coworkers become competitors, neighbors become potential drains, and communities turn into mere transactional networks. You're isolated, focused only on your own climb up the ladder.
Which ironically makes you more dependent on the very system you might be trying to escape through self-help.
Okay, deception number 2. Deception 2, the alchemy of adversity.
This is that spiritual bypassing we talked about, weaponized, turning all pain into personal growth.
The type here is a logical fallacy, specifically bypassing, powered by, well, who benefits from people accepting hardship without complaint?
Both the state and capital, that's the source of power. A population that passively accepts suffering as good for the soul is much easier to govern and more compliant in the workplace.
Its function, then, is to pathologize righteous anger. If you feel outrage about injustice, inequality, exploitation,
The framework tells you that anger is an ego problem, a sign of poor spiritual development. It reframes systemic oppression as just another personalized learning opportunity.
which completely delegitimizes resistance.
Totally. The impact is the creation of these passive, navel-gazing subjects. People become incredibly focused on managing their internal state, adjusting their attitude, finding the lessons.
Instead of demanding that the external conditions change, instead of fighting to end the oppression itself.
Right. They're too busy working on themselves to work on changing the world. The status quo remains perfectly safe.
And the third deception ties back to relationships again. Deception 3. The commodification of connection.
Using love and connection as strategic tools.
The type involves a false dichotomy, either useful connection or toxic drain, and crucially, suppressed evidence ignoring the value of non-transactional bonds and the source of power.
This one feels very much driven by the self-help guru industry itself, working in concert with capital. The industry needs you to feel somewhat isolated and disconnected.
Why?
Because if you have strong, supportive, non-transactional community ties, you're less likely to need their expensive coaching courses and seminars for guidance and validation. Isolation creates dependency.
So the function is actually enforced isolation, disguised as smart social strategy.
That's a good way to put it. Encourage people to manage their friends and family like an investment portfolio. Cut the underperforming assets, the people who are struggling, needy, or just don't contribute directly to your climb.
Adopting that worldview is a huge step away from basic human empathy.
It really is. And the impact is devastatingly predictable. Increased loneliness, severed ties with family and community, and ultimately greater reliance on the guru and their system for meaning, structure, and a sense of belonging. It creates this perfect closed loop where the guru's advice leads to the isolation that makes you need the guru's advice even more.
It's a feedback loop of consumption and dependency.
Okay.
We've dissected the axioms, the logic, the philosophy, the deceptions. Let's bring it all together. Segment 5. Synthesized critique. What is the ultimate lie, and what's the alternative path?
We need to nail down the core message, the unifying thread running through all of this. What's the fundamental deception?
Okay, based on everything we've unpacked from the sources, the ultimate unifying lie of this specific brand of self-help, the optimization gospel, seems to be this. Freedom is presented as an outcome of internal optimization within an unchallenged external system.
Say that again. That feels important.
Freedom is presented as an outcome of internal optimization within an unchallenged external system.
That really captures it. It's a brilliant ideological maneuver. The whole self-help discourse creates this kind of internal panopticon. You're constantly watching yourself, judging yourself, correcting yourself against the guru's standards.
And in this system, any failure, you lose your job, you burn out, you feel depressed.
Yeah.
It's always framed as your fault, a personal deficiency.
Right. You didn't follow the ritual correctly, your mindset was wrong, you attracted negativity, you didn't optimize hard enough.
And the solution is always more self-help. Buy the next book, take the next course, double down on the internal work.
Which keeps the external system, the invisible cage, completely off the hook. The actual structures of capitalism, inequality, patriarchy, whatever systemic issues are genuinely causing the problems, they remain unexamined, untouched.
The self-help industry doesn't just ignore the cage. It actively needs the cage to remain standing. Its whole business model depends on people feeling trapped and believing the only way out is through individual internal adjustment.
The ultimate irony being that the path they sell as liberation, becoming world-class, often just means becoming a more efficient, compliant, optimized component of that very system you were trying to escape.
So if climbing the individual ladder inside the cage isn't freedom, what is? What's the counter paradigm?
The sources suggest a fundamental shift in metaphor. We need to reject the ladder, the symbol of individual competitive ascent.
And embrace what instead?
The network, the web, symbolizing collective connection, mutual support, shared resilience. The focus shifts from how can I get ahead to how can we lift each other up.
That requires a completely different way of relating to people, especially those who are struggling.
Absolutely. The key action proposed is a radical reinterpretation of those so-called toxic people.
Instead of seeing them as energy vampires to be deleted.
Start considering if their pain, their anger, their exhaustion might actually be a rational, understandable response to genuine systemic toxicity. Maybe their negativity is actually righteous critique.
By shutting them out, you're silencing potentially crucial information about the cage itself. By reconnecting, by listening, you stop privatizing political problems and start seeing the patterns.
Exactly. So the goal isn't to achieve some sterile, lonely peak of individual performance through purchased rituals. The alternative path to liberation, the sources argue, lies in the messy, inconvenient, and profoundly loving solidarity of collective action.
It's about building real communities, real networks of mutual aid that are strong enough to actually challenge the cage, not just help individuals cope within it.
Because real freedom isn't found in being the most loving person in the room to close a deal. It's found in building the kind of collective love and power that can actually tear down the oppressive walls of the room itself. That's the liberatory counterpoint.
A powerful alternative.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you. So we've torn apart the self-help gospel of individual optimization. Now the real question is, what is the one idea you've held on to that you're finally ready to put on the chopping block?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical. Thank you for joining us.